Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the State of Africa podcast. Today I am joined by Gloria Kiconco, all the way from Uganda. So, Gloria is a Ugandan poet, essayist, and zine maker based in Kampala, Uganda. She has published with Pre-Lit magazine, Transition magazine, and the Uganda Review. Her poems appear in 2035 Africa, an anthology of contemporary poetry, and Dear Nev, an anthology of East African writers. Her personal essays can be found on Ada and More of Us. Gloria was one of the inaugural writers in residence in 2019 with Goethe Institute Burkina Faso and a poet in residence with the Poetry Library at Manchester Metropolitan University in January February of 2023. Zines include Sold Out in 2016, Return to Sender in 2018, You Are Lost, You Are Here in 2020, Corner of Delight in 2021, Cardinal Directions in 2024 from the Send Me exhibition, and Negative Space in 2025 with Borderland Art. That is so much.
When you
I
say it,
mean,
it sounds
you've
like a
done
lot.
you've done so much. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you're like,
Mm.
wow, I'm this good. Yes, you are. You
Oh,
are.
thank
Take your
you. I was gonna
flowers.
say
Take your
more
flowers.
like I've been
So
busy.
welcome with me, Gloria. So Gloria, thank you for doing this with me. I really appreciate it. For people who, I mean, if you're listening for the first time, the State of Africa podcast is just us basically sitting with Africans from different parts of the continent and eventually the diaspora, where we are talking about where we've been, where we are, and where we plan to go. I mean, just trying to see Africa's future. Africa's future is bright, really. We just have to find a way to get there, right? So we can understand ourselves better as countries on the continent to connect with each other and to unite ourselves. So once again, Gloria, thank you for doing this with me. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much for inviting me, Bolu.
Um, I don't want to take too long before getting into it. I mean, there's been so much trying to connect with you, trying to like arrange a time to make this happen, and we're
Yeah.
finally here. So I'll just dive
Yeah.
right into it. So I'm going to start by asking, what is your favorite thing about being, first of all, African, and then being Ugandan?
Yeah. So absolutely one of my favorite things about being African is meeting Africans from other countries and finding really random, well, seemingly random things that we share, right? And exchanging like the name for a dish that we like when I learned that for us, what we call gonja, you all call dodo, like the sweet plantain. Yeah, the
Really?
fried sweet plantain. And yet
Oh,
we call it
what do you call
gonja.
it?
And then for
Oh,
us,
okay. I
dodo
just learned
is
something.
like a vegetable. It's like a green, right? Um, and then sometimes it's a language thing. Sometimes it's like an attitude thing. Sometimes it's like an experience with parents. Like when I see those like TikTok videos of like African moms throwing a slipper at you. It's like, yeah, this is so accurate to my experience. That's my favorite thing is that I have a whole continent of people I relate with. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And then as Ugandan, I'm sure there's a lot more. There's a lot more you like about being Ugandan.
Ah,
So
yeah.
can you just share some things?
About being Ugandan, it's so complex when it's your own place, but um, I think one of the things I like about being Ugandan is kind of the layers of Ugandanness, right? I thought it was also like it's kind of funny because I'm a Ugandan who didn't really grow up here. I was born here and I lived in the US and I came back. Yeah,
Oh,
so I had to kind of find my way back in, and like how people feel about diaspora kids. Sometimes it's not great, but I love listening to people tell me stories about, how they grew up, like when you look at like your own culture from like a slightly outside perspective, it's just really fascinating.
Yeah.
Like and that's the thing I love about being Ugandan is that I'm constantly finding new ways to appreciate who we are, our history, and more than anything else, our sense of humor. Sometimes it's really unnecessary and dark, but like we have quite the sense of humor. For real, we've chased people away from this country by making fun of them, which that I don't like, but we always have a joke no matter what's happening.
Yeah, I think that's an African trait because Nigerians also find the joke
Yeah,
in everything. I mean, personally, I like dark jokes, but I've tried to reduce the amount of dark
yeah,
jokes I tell because not everybody finds it funny, right? So, I mean, I can just look at something really mundane and I just make a
yeah,
fun out of it, right? And it's like that was unnecessary, but yeah. So I get what you're trying to
right?
say.
Yeah,
Totally, totally.
it's too funny
So.
actually.
But I can see you're getting used to it because I mean you seem really lively. So maybe sometimes now you're like, okay, maybe that's funny. I don't like it, but it's funny. I mean, I can imagine maybe you're trying to get used to it
Yeah,
now.
like now I'm
So
totally used to it. I'm in on the jokes. I'm laughing about things. Now I'm the one telling myself when I'm outside of Uganda, like maybe don't make that joke, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
nice. There's so much similarities between us, right? And when you look at the cultures, you look at the let's just say the cultures and how the backgrounds of different people, you are tempted to think that we are different. And yes, truly we are, but then the real like at the core of each culture, there's a similarity among us, there's a similarity within us. So that is part of why I'm trying to do what I'm doing because you realize that if more countries in Africa can see the like if a Nigerian can see Ghanaian or Ugandan, if you can see them for who they truly are, you realize that these people are not really that
yeah,
different from you. They are just far away from you. They are not really
yeah,
different, right?
absolutely.
Do you also see it
I
that way?
do. I've been really lucky enough to get to travel a few times, and that has helped as well to kind of like the distance we imagine is really not that much. And once you like talk to people, you visit their place, you go to their markets, you're like, I see myself in all of this. And then also like
Yeah.
historically, when I'm like reading about the experiences our countries went through, especially Uganda and Nigeria, we have a lot in common in terms of like our colonial experience. Um, yeah, there's
Really?
an idea that I can't verify because I'm not an academic and I don't have the sources, but the kind of what happened to Nigeria, that what the British did to y'all, they specifically took that experiment, refined it, and applied it in Uganda so that we were like the perfect version of what they thought they could do in terms of African colonialism, which is quite bad. It explains a lot about the way we are, but it's something that we share. So I think we're quite sympathetic, especially to the historic experience of Nigeria because we see so much of what they went through, we went through. Yeah, so there's a lot. And sometimes you'll just see a news story and be like, I get it. I get it.
Like yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen that before.
yeah, yeah.
It's part of what I was going to ask you
Mm,
later on, but I think we can just go in there now. Like, which African country do people from your country? I mean, you said you didn't grow up there, but I imagine you've had some experiences. So, which African country do you think do Ugandans feel closest to, or like culturally or historically? I mean, you just
yeah.
mentioned Nigeria. Like, I didn't even know that to be honest. This is the first time I'm hearing that, and that's the beauty of this conversation. Are there, okay, Nigeria, are there other like countries? Are there other countries you can speak to
Yeah,
about that?
definitely. We have, of course, our closest relationship is with Kenya. Because we share borders but also share tribes, and I'm sure you have that with like the countries right around you.
That one I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, and
Yeah,
like it's there's interesting relationships we have with both like Kenya and Tanzania, and I know like Rwanda as well. But for me, I think that in general, like we have this kind of sibling relationship with Kenya where we love to fight about like things that aren't that important. Like the way you and not you specifically, but like Nigerians and Ghana will fight over like jollof, will fight with Kenya over like
Yeah,
something,
love rice.
just specifically cultural, right? And there's something really lovely about that when we see them doing their protests. We try to do a protest here. There's this kind of, we're looking to each other and learning from each other. So that's our closest relationship. We have a close historical relationship with Tanzania in terms of like academics, and it's where like our president was for part of like his revolution. So there's like a lot that ties us together, and a lot of that time of like Pan-Africanism, that time of revolution, we were really close with Tanzania. So those are the ones that are in physical proximity. But we have, I think, an understanding of like Zimbabwe because of their like Mugabe situation. We related. We have an understanding of Nigeria and a love for Nigeria because of the media. We're big Nollywood people in Uganda. So I think there's different relationships with
Yeah.
everybody, but
Oh,
those are the ones that I've observed most.
also Nollywood is big in
Big,
Uganda.
and especially like in
I
the
didn't know.
late 90s, early 2000s. Everybody was watching all those like really long movies, the 3 hour Nollywood films. I'm trying to think of one right now off head and I'm not, but like the ones with like Genevieve and like, you know, yeah, like
Genevieve.
I'm not the person to ask about it because I missed it, but
Yeah.
everybody in Uganda, like,
Yeah.
yeah, we know, we're down.
Right. I've learned so much in how many minutes? That's interesting. I would have to watch this again just to soak
Yeah,
it in. So I guess you're not a movie person, but you like to read. 'Cause you just said you're not the right person to ask. Okay. That's, I mean, for writers, I would, not really, but I mean, maybe not all writers, but I guess you're just more inclined to read than
yeah, I
watch.
I am, yeah.
So, so are there some culture shocks you've experienced interacting with other African people, or you go to an African nation and like, no way, and you're just shocked? Is it,
I don't know if there's anything particularly shocking. I think the place that gave me the most cultural shock was South Africa. Um, it's kind of like what I'd imagined, but more more contrast than I expected, right? From like how the cities really feel like almost, and I hate this comparison, but it's the easiest one to make, like European cities, right? In like the structure, the roads, the cars, everything. But then that like really stark racial difference, in terms of like who has money, who has security. That was really wild for me because you hear about it, then you see it, and you're like, on our continent, really? Like, it's really weird to like make sense of it.
yeah.
Um, I don't know because I keep getting the feeling when I visit places. Maybe this would have been a good question like when I first started traveling. But now wherever I go, I feel like I already kind of have an affinity and an understanding. So I don't get a lot of cultural shock, but I get a lot of insight into the way, people are, into the things that matter for them, into like what's the party culture, what's this kind of culture. So yeah, I think maybe the funny thing is a lot of people tell me their impressions of Uganda, and that's usually really funny. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, really? Wait, people tell you their impression of dance, like you guys are really
Like,
fun. Is
no,
that what
no,
you
no,
just said?
they'll tell me their impressions, which I find funny. Like, oh, you guys are really, I find it funny. They'll be like, oh, you guys are really just
Oh,
docile.
okay.
You're like this, you're like that. You women are like this. And I think that stuff's really funny. So usually it's the kind of thing where we all figure out that we've been told so many stereotypes about each other and it's not really it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, you hear a lot about Nigerians and how they are
Hmm.
so loud, how they are very
Yeah.
aggressive.
We hear that all the
I
time.
mean, there's, I mean, true to that, but then it's just like there's, once you have an idea of how people from a certain country are, you just plaster that and you don't want to know
Exactly.
anything
Yeah.
else, right? And I think we have that for different
Mm,
countries in Africa. And to be honest, even that in itself creates a barrier if you
mm,
think about it. Like it just creates a barrier in your mind that Nigerians are this,
mm-hmm.
Ugandans are this, South Africans are this. The moment you start interacting with one person, you come from that state of mind and you're like, if I'm speaking to a Nigerian, I have to like step up because they're going to be aggressive. Whereas instead of you just let your guard down, try to know them for who
Yeah,
they are, and then try to relate with.
yeah, for sure.
So it's all these little
That's
things.
straight up
Yeah.
wisdom. That is, it's true. Mm.
So if someone were to come to Uganda now, right, where would you take them? Like not somewhere popular, but somewhere like meaningful, right? For Ugandans, where will you take them? Someone who will visit
Mm.
Uganda.
Well, it's not something that's, well, it's meaningful for all Ugandans and it's meaningful to each of us in a different way. But I think that I would take, and I do this actually when people come visit, I always try to take them to the lake. Um, Either to hang out on
Mm,
the side of the lake. There's like a couple of different places, right? And they range from like fancy to just like local market type places. So there's like a local market where you can just see people buying and selling fish. You can sit there and you can eat the fish, fresh fried next to the water. Or you go out on a boat on the lake and just kind of, I don't know, it's like an experience I think people don't expect to have in Uganda because we're not like seaside or anything. But it's very serene.
mhm.
And I think that sometimes people are surprised that there's this kind of serenity in this slightly chaotic little city. Um, I don't know.
Why would they be surprised?
It's something
It's
people have said before when we've gone on like a boat ride, because I just think it's a really good way to connect with that dual like thing in Uganda where it's like a very natural, physically beautiful place, but it's also like very populated. And so when you're in Kampala, the lakeside is not far from anywhere in Kampala, so you just go, you get on a boat, and you kind of feel this the both sides of it right at once, And I really like sharing that experience with people. Yeah. And then also the other thing I do is because we're the Kampala specifically is like a place of seven hills, right? So it's just nice to find like somewhere up high to go and like look at
really
all the places around.
now that would be
Yeah,
fun.
and it depends if you like it to be like a party, it could be a party. If you just want somewhere to sit and watch the sunset, that can happen too. So yeah, those kinds of experiences.
So I'm sure you've done that like a couple of times, like up the
Yeah,
hills, having just
yeah, yeah,
picnic or
yeah,
something.
definitely. Mm.
Nice. So I mean, I think you answered the question I was going to ask, like, what surprises people most when they visit Uganda? But I think you just said like the serenity. In my mind, I'm thinking, why would serenity be surprising? Because I mean, there's water everywhere.
Yeah,
Well, not water everywhere. Not in. I mean,
and
there's no water, but
well, I
then
mean, Uganda is
so
chaotic in its own way, and Kampala too, right? Like, it's to me anyway. It's just like a very loud place where things are always happening, and it just feels like there's not really a place to like catch your breath. Something's always happening. I know, like the way you were saying that people say, "Oh, Nigerians are loud." I'm like, guys, Ugandans are also loud in their own way, right? So I think that, yeah,
right,
yeah.
exactly.
Let's see. I think that is a thing that can be surprising about Ugandans. I think the other thing that people say is surprising, I don't know if it is they find it really easy to, they get let in really easily in Uganda, right? Like if you're visiting, people aren't really going to treat you like you don't belong or like you're not welcome. There's just this general, like, oh, just come in and enjoy with us everywhere you go. So a lot of people come and they feel like I just kind of want to stay because I feel welcome everywhere I go. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool thing that is a trait of most Ugandans. Yeah.
I mean, it's being welcomed as a foreigner in I don't say in a strange land, but in a foreign land, right, is one of the beautiful things someone can
Yeah.
experience in life. And I have a theory that it's probably one of those things that caused like Africa's colonial history, like one of the things that like led into it, because inviting foreigners into your own land and just treating them as, oh, beautiful people, and then they take advantage
Exactly.
of that.
Yeah.
That's my own theory, probably right or wrong. You get what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So
I'm with you on that
um
theory.
so let's go into, right. See, I think there's a truth to
I think so too.
that. So do you think Africa as a continent can actually move from being, I mean, speaking about all these things, right? I mean, Africa is
Mm.
beautiful, to be honest. Africa is beautiful. But when you look at the other side of things, do you think we can move from being underdeveloped to being developed? Like in the way we see progress. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, do you think that's possible?
I do. I really do, and I have to. Um, because it's not it's not a healthy place to be to think that, oh, this is going nowhere, right? So yeah, and I do, I have to,
Yes.
but I also have now like got real ideas why that. Yeah.
Mm. So, I mean, dive right in and share with us those
Yeah.
ideas.
Sometimes I get the feeling that all the pieces are there, right? We know what we need to do. Um, it's rare that I've been to like a meeting of a bunch of different Africans or just a lot of different Ugandans, right? And I say different in the sense of like not people coming strictly from my own bubble, right? People of different classes, different tribes, different um, um, religions, etc. And it's we all kind of know what's not working. We understand how like the culture of like corruption is crippling all of us. We understand that the things aren't the way like our parents envisioned it. You know what worked for them doesn't work for us. We're dealing with like the double problem of what like millennials around the world are dealing with, but as well as the like African nations growing out of the whatever we've been passing through in the last like 40, 50 years of like that post independence move from, you know, liberty to less liberty to a lot of oppression, a lot of conflict. You know, so we see these things, we're learning from our history. And I think that what's getting in our way is this like collaboration in good faith. Um, I feel a lot of what happens is people want to do something, but you know, one or more persons will just want to take for themselves, right? They're not really thinking about, well, this is going to be for all of us. And, you know, part of that is like survival, right? When you're forced to spend for scraps, then you immediately are like, okay, how can I get the most out of this and then like get out and, you know, help me and mine. So it's not, you know, coming out of necessarily a bad place, but, for us, you know, in Uganda, we know that there's a new road being built, but we already know that somebody's going to take some of the materials or some of the money and it's going to be subpar. And that's going to create the problems of more accidents on the road or, you know, having to redo this process in a few years, not being able to transport goods. And so it's always these kind of like things that really get in our way. And I don't know if it's a matter of waiting it out because part of it is I think it's like a culture of like elders who are like, this is just how we do things and it's really hard to change things. Or if it's a matter of young people rising up like they're doing in like, you know, in is it Mozambique or Madagascar, in Nepal and, you know, all those things. But I think for me it's more about like our own personal integrity, that where we have to start from, that if I'm gonna
Yeah.
do even just a project with you that I'm working on, I'm gonna come in good faith. I'm gonna work honestly. I'm gonna work hard, but you know, not break myself, right? And I think that that's the thing that's gonna like get us moving forward because we have so many intellectuals and thinkers, and you know, we have done a good job talking about what are the things that are not working.
Exactly. So it's up to us to then figure out how to make those things
Yeah.
work. And like you mentioned, just dealing with each other in bad faith is a lot of what is causing all of this, right? So when you think about the independent countries, I mean, I think you touched on that, but if you just think about it more critically, how what do you think is stopping us from engaging with each other and uniting as individual countries, as sovereign countries? Because one of my beliefs is that one thing that can bring Africa out from the dumps is the countries uniting, because one country cannot actually do anything on its own. If you think about it, the countries are too run down, they are too small to be able to pull any kind of weight by themselves. So the only way out of this is to collaborate. So what do you think is really stopping that?
Yeah, I think that um, kind of a lot of things. And this is just absolutely from my perspective. This is not a an analysis, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's the kind of like
Yeah.
there's these collaborations that are trying to happen on like a political and policy level, right? So there's like you know, the East African community, and there's whatever's being done there. But I think that there's, for let's say the average person like me and you, right, who's living in these countries, there's a way we need to care. I don't know if it's care more about what's happening in other countries, because we do care, but there's something that kind of breaks down between like the caring and the doing of something. There's our field is culture, right? So culturally, how can we come to understand each other better? And I think that's where it really becomes important. One, to have conversations like this, to like read each other's literature, to meet each other, um, you know, have different
Mhm.
artists come and do concerts. We have to find ways to tie ourselves to each other. If we can't just, you know, do it out of our like abstract desire for the better, then we need to find a way to like put skin in the game, to like make it, you know, our responsibility as well. So like, now that I know you, if something happens to Bolu and somebody tells me, I'm gonna be like, what can I do to help, right? And I think that's kind of one of the things that could help make that change. But yeah, I think times are harder than they've been, at least for our relative generation. I don't know how old you are, but like our relative generation, things have been hard. And you're looking at a time right now where things are hard in so many countries at the same time, that we're all kind of like, what do we do? And we're also just trying to survive. So I think that's a really big challenge, and it takes a lot out of us to kind of keep caring and giving and making time for each other. Like, it's just kind of hard work for a while, and we might have to commit to that, you know?
And something you mentioned earlier when you said like there are a lot of I can't remember how you phrased it, but like intellectuals, just smart people generally around the continent. Is one of the things that drove me to this, because when you've been in a place for long enough and you're thinking, well, I'm in Nigeria, this is how Nigeria is. And then I started to interact with more people from outside of Nigeria. I'm like, okay, so if they're this kind of these people are really smart, yet Africa is where
Hmm.
it is, right? So you might be tempted to think that okay, it's only in Nigeria where this problem is, but then when you go outside of Nigeria, like it's the same everywhere. So you're like, what exactly is the problem? If this kind of people are here, intellectual, smart people, very courageous people, and yet there's something being done somewhere that is causing all this chaos. So what exactly is the
Yeah.
problem? All right. So like you said, caring, there's a gap between caring and doing. And something you said earlier when you said that okay, that they're building. I think you said they are building they're constructing a road or something like that. But you already know that they will steal some of the like the structural materials, and then they'll be actually. So I think we care enough, but you're like, we know this is going to happen. So what's the point
Yeah.
in even trying to fix it, because we know this is. So you're just like, it's just helplessness. There's something I learned a long time ago. Learned helplessness, when you're like, there's absolutely nothing I will do that will make this thing better. So I care really much, but then why do something about it when the same thing will just
Yeah.
repeat itself? And I think that's the state of many people. That's the mindset we are
Yeah.
in,
For
right?
sure. And there's like, for me, two things there. One, there's definitely need to acknowledge like the external things that are interfering. And there's a long history of colonial countries interfering with our resources, right? And how we distribute those resources. I've been reading news about what Nigeria is going through constantly over oil fields and all this stuff, and it makes it that much harder, and that's where some of that learned helplessness comes from. And I struggle with this a lot. So recently, a friend of mine I was talking to about this, gave the advice that we should try to care locally. Like, I might not be able to help this person do this big thing, but I can help my neighbor with this. I can help my neighbor with that. I can care for this community. And I think that can also expand to our ties with our, in different countries. We can still reach out to each other. We can help each other out. So that, for me, when I feel helpless, I think about
Yeah.
that, because otherwise it's too overwhelming and dejecting.
So you just try to do the ones around you, and I mean, leave the ones outside of your circle of influence.
Yeah, like the things
You
outside of
mentioned
your
like following
control.
up on what Nigeria is doing. Yeah, outside of your control. And as a Nigerian, it's sad to say because when you look at what's happening in West Africa, a lot of the countries around Nigeria are trying to like move things forward. Like you said, the colonial like structures and all those things, they're still very much in place. I can't remember where I saw it recently that there is like a rail carrying goods, I think oil or something, or coal, like directly outside of that country, out. Like it is there permanently and it does like how many routes per day, right? It's still there till today. And in my mind, I'm wondering, so that country, why can't the government find a way to like reroute that or even negotiate some kind of like just find a common ground? Yeah, that thing is still happening, right? And in the case of West Africa, all the countries around Nigeria, they're trying to move things forward. And sadly, it's sad to say because I'm Nigerian, but then for some reason our government is just like pulling everything back. They're like we're trying to go for Nigeria, just pulling it back. And because of the might of Nigeria, it seems like yeah, you're going to succeed by doing that. But like they say, it's only one. The a chain is as strong as a broken ring. So it's part of what's
Yeah,
causing Africa's downfall,
absolutely.
really. Because one person can destroy your whole group. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even reading like historically, when progress is being made, one person can just betray the whole bunch, and then you're back to
Yeah.
square one. So it's a it's a really sad story.
It is in every country.
So when you think
Go on.
about it, yeah, no,
No,
go
I'm
go on,
just
go on.
gonna
I'm going to move to
make
the
a
next thing,
joke
but
about how every country has their like faders from the past, and you're like,
right on my on the podcast, I mentioned it once. Like, isn't it funny how every time in history, in Africa's history, where progress seems to be made, one person finds a way to just to destroy it. When you think about Congo, you think about this Ghanaian guy. I can't remember his name now. You think about Burkina
mm-hmm,
Faso. At different points in history, somebody finds a way to just collude with the oppressors, and then you just destroy everything. As if you're not part of people being
mm,
freed. It's sad, but I've thought long and hard about how that can be like neutralized. But then, to be honest, I don't know. I'm still thinking
yeah,
about it. So when you look at it, so what does progress look like for us? If you think about it, so what does progress really look like? What do you
yeah. I think progress to me looks like getting rid of the systems that aren't working and creating systems that do work for us. Um, a lot of people talk about like the wisdom in our indigenous knowledge, right? Which it took me a while to understand like how this can be applied. But let's say, for example, a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, grew up in northern Uganda, and I might get the story kind of wrong, so northern Ugandans, don't be mad at me. But just as an example, she was telling me how when there was like a domestic uh, violence case, it would be brought forward to like a group of people, like elders and neighbors and so on, and they would mediate, and then they would like you know do something about it right there and then. And the joke would always be like, oh, then like she would also beat him back or something like that, you know. And I don't know if that's what really happened, but when you look at like the wisdom in that was you're not going to hide from the thing you've done, right? Um, since we know what's going on, let's all deal with it. And that way, there's none of that kind of like, you could keep pretending. I think one of the things that I really don't like about our culture right now is a lot of terrible things happen behind closed doors that nobody talks about, right? And as long as we're not talking about it, we're not going to do any better. So that to me is like, let's get rid of the thing that doesn't work, which is not addressing the problem, and maybe look at what does work. And if we need inspiration, we can look at some of our knowledge that we've and our systems that we used in the past. If we're looking for alternatives, right? Maybe that's one way of doing it. And I think that progress also looks like this kind of connection, because I can tell you that when I my first trip to another African country that wasn't Kenya might actually have been to Nigeria, and that was in 2015.
Mm.
And at that time, I knew
Wow.
nothing.
At that time, Nigeria was still good.
It was excellent. I learned so much during that trip. I was inspired a lot. I wrote some stuff, and I learned a lot. And the thing is, I've done a lot of my learning around other Africans. They're the ones who teach me, oh, this is how our experience has been. And then
Mm.
you start to kind of connect the dots and see, like, systematically, this is the issue. Then they tell you, read this academic, read this writer, look at this photographer, and you start to kind of make sense of everything that way, right? So you can't also just like things can't happen in a vacuum. We need to like learn from each other as well. To me, progress looks like building new systems and kind of like not crowdsourcing, but like sourcing ideas and inspirations from all over Africa, right? We don't have to do things the way they're prescribed. Like one other really funny example is like recently like Western countries, or let's just say white people in general, have really gotten into like mud huts and like the the kind of climate friendly
Right.
building that we used to do, and how like there's natural
Mm-hmm.
cooling systems and
Building.
all this stuff, and we're like, yeah, we told you that, you didn't believe us, and you told us we had to build these kinds of houses, right? And now we're going back to it. So that stuff to me, it's a very funny thing that you see happening a lot, and it's like, yeah, so let's look at the wisdom behind that. How can we make use of that? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So if only we could find a way to promote our own ideas more, you realize that the people who came up with these ideas, they didn't come about it just by, it wasn't abstract. There was a reason why those ideas came to life. So for example, the mud huts, they're like, yeah, it's a natural cooling system. That is why we use it. We didn't just say, oh, we don't have something to live in, so let us create mud huts. No, it's because there's a reason for it. And if you think about it, it must have been because, oh, our weather is so hot. So how do we stay inside and yet be
Yeah.
cool, right? But then it's like a practical solution you get. But over there, your weather is, I mean, relatively cool compared to ours. So you probably won't need something like that. But over here, yeah, we need something like that. And getting rid of systems. I just remember something. Getting rid of systems that don't cause you to turn off the internet during the election season. I just remember that. Because you remember when we were trying to like find like a time to do this, you talked about like turning off the internet during
Yeah.
election.
Yeah.
I could not believe it. Like what?
Yeah.
I said I was going to mention this. So what is it about that? Is that like a norm? Is that something that they do, or did they just start? Or is there a reason for it? Or
We had the internet off during the last election as well, and basically, like the government justification is that it's to stop the spread of misinformation um, and interference with election results. It's something that's the gist of like what they say, but it's really, I think, about not allowing avenues for people to mobilize, basically. Yeah. And I think that surprisingly, the biggest harm it does is more to do with the economy because you just kind of shut down part of the economy for like a week, and that's actually like a lot of money lost.
Exactly.
Um, yeah. So, anywho, that's a thing that we deal with.
I mean, I just remember. So, okay. So, what are some things Ugandans quietly feel proud of? Just generally speaking, what are some things Ugandans generally feel proud
Okay.
of? I mean, I don't know why. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I can think of one thing that we're not quietly proud of. Um, we're loudly proud of, which is our like abundance. Um, and
Bond.
yeah, in terms of like food, um, fertile
Oh, okay.
land, um, it's called. I think Uganda is one of those places that's referred to as like a breadbasket, right? We can grow like a lot of food. Generally, it's cheaply accessible to most people. I think it's changing. Like in the last couple of decades, it's been changing. But for a long time, everybody had access to some land, at least to like, uh, you know, um, I forgot what the word is, but sustainable farming just for themselves and their families. And we're really proud of this because
Abstinence farming or
yes,
something
yes,
like that.
yes, and we're really sustenance, yeah, and we're really proud of this because hey, Ugandans are like we don't go hungry. Except in the north where there's been
I
droughts.
should visit
Yes,
Uganda.
like the food is there. I mean, people say we don't use spices, but the food is there. Apart from like the droughts in the north, where like obviously again that's a policy issue. We have more than enough food to help them out. It's just like how are we distributing it? So we're really proud of that.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we're really
Oh,
proud of that, and then we are quietly proud of our stability. It comes at a cost, but I know Ugandans are quietly proud of the fact that like relatively we get right? There has not been a civil war in a long time. We
mm,
had so many like tumultuous periods that I think that there's a kind of like quiet pride because it's not ideal, but we're like, hey, at least. So that's like a thing that it's weird and uncomfortable, but it's true. Um, yeah, and I'm sure we're proud of a lot of other things, like our music, our many like natural landscapes. We have like the most birds, the most variety of
yeah.
birds. People love to come birding here, but yeah, but
Really?
those are just like kind of tourism things, and I think that a lot of the things we're truly proud of.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, but
Yeah.
we're really proud of like our. I don't know, like we have a way of enduring. We have a way of like you can't keep us down. Like there's a lot of different things Ugandans are proud of. Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can say enduring is like a general African trait because we just find a way to endure through it all. The bad government, terrible policies, just find a way to keep going. Endurance is like in our blood. I mean, it's like a coping mechanism at the end of the day. So let's switch over to the writer, the
Mm,
writer in you. Babe, just still talking about Africa, really. As a writer, I mean, you've mentioned like traveling to different countries. That means it has been quite easy for you to connect with other writers across Africa. So how was that? How has that been? Is there a cultural, how will I put it now? So culturally, does that affect the material like from different parts of Africa, or is writing just writing?
mm,
Do you think that has an effect, like meeting other writers from other countries?
yeah, that's a really good question. It definitely has an effect. And I think that we want to meet other writers. We want to read other writing. We want to know like what else is going on, you know, and we have to kind of develop our own voice as writers. So there needs to be, in a sense, a kind of like distinct Ugandan tradition in writing or voice. But I think either by force because of the way people think of Africa as a country, right? We're all kind of next to each other as writers, so we're
Right.
always like our writing kind of develops next to each other. We grew up like so many other Africans reading Chinua Achebe or Ngugi Thiong'o. And so these are the things that we kind of, and actually, you know what? Uganda used to have a real history of bringing writers together here. We had like a Pan-African
Mm-hmm.
Writers Conference in like 1960 or something and brought all these writers here. So
Wow.
I think it's not so much maybe how we write or what we write about, but about kind of inspiring each other, supporting each other. Um, People are trying to make an effort more towards reading and buying African writers, because we're inundated. There's so many external texts that come in, books, secondhand books. Like we really are trying to like make it happen for African writers. So yeah, I have a ton to say about that. So I'm gonna just
I mean,
stop right there because I could talk and never stop.
you said you have a lot to say
Yeah,
about
I'm
that.
very passionate about like the growing relationships between writers across Africa. Like it means a lot, and in the diaspora, right? It's also now a growing relationship between um, Black Americans, Black British people, Caribbean people. Like we're all just trying to reconnect and be like, what's up? What's going on? What are we writing about? What do we care about? Yeah.
From my end, I guess we are rounding up, but if you have like the time to like expound on some of these things, like you said, you have like a lot of things to talk about. So if you don't mind, you can. I'm good from my end. Do you get what I'm saying? So I was going to say something earlier. I think I've forgotten now. I think it's about okay, yes. So you mentioned Chinua Achebe. It's strange hearing that from you because, like I said earlier, when you've in Nigeria is from Nigeria. So in your mind, you're thinking, yeah, it's just in Nigeria here, people know about Chinua Achebe. But hearing that from you is like, oh, okay. So not because he wasn't capable of like moving out of Nigeria or his work going out of Nigeria, but it's just strange hearing it like from a Ugandan, like you've read Chinua Achebe, and that's just that's encouraging. Basically, it's really encouraging because you realize that the work you do can actually travel across boundaries. Do you get what I'm saying? So I mean, that's really beautiful. And so as a Ugandan, are there policies? So for example, now I make music, and when you talk about like music or films, and I'm sure writing is part of it, you realize there are some policies that directly or indirectly affect what you do, even if it is artistic. So like in Uganda, are there some policies, are there like systems that affect you, affect your work as a writer that you wish they weren't there? Or are there some that you wish were there that are not?
So two things come to mind. One is as a writer, there's the last like 10 years or so have been really bad for writers in Uganda. I've seen a couple writers be like imprisoned and exiled. Yeah, there was
Really?
the big cases were it's for political writing. I'm not a political writer myself, but it doesn't, it sends a message about writers. There's been a
Yeah.
lot of like the government came down hard on the some of the publications like newspapers and stuff. So in general, it's kind of like a hostile atmosphere for writers. It makes you very uncomfortable with what you write about, publish. You don't feel like particularly safe. So it's really hard to develop your writing if you're constantly having to write about only acceptable subjects, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's a really big challenge.
Yeah.
Um,
So I mean, okay.
yeah, no, I was gonna say the
No,
other
go on,
thing
go on.
is that there's I don't know if it's changing yet, but from 2014 there was a shift, and this happened in many countries, to divert funding to STEM subjects. But along with that, there was also like a declaration by our president that the arts are useless, and we lost a lot of support publicly for the arts. I don't know if there was funding before, but there's generally this declining support for the arts and this idea that it's useless. So there's both like a policy and an attitude. And that's not helpful for any artists. And of course, that includes writers. But I
Yeah.
think it really affected visual artists, performance artists, everybody. So those are the two big things that come to mind that really get in the way of being a writer and or a creative in Uganda.
It's funny because this is one of the things that drove me to this because I realized, I mean, there's a lot of let's develop Africa. So you put money into manufacturing, you put money into STEM, you put
Yeah,
money into healthcare. Those
they
things
are.
are really good. I'm not discounting them. But then when you come to the creative side of things, you're like, everybody's just like, nah, bro, just put them, just shelf them somewhere. Like, we'll get back to you later. And I'm like, do you understand that media and communications actually a lot of has a lot of what's the word now? Impacts a lot of the other things you're doing so
So
much.
much.
Like narrative has
Yeah.
creative. So everything else you're doing, you might do great things. If nobody communicates it, yeah, just I mean, it's really nothing at the end of the day. But I don't think a lot of governments, a lot of associations or whatever you want to call it, they don't really understand the impact of whatever it is that the creative sector has on every other sector. So I don't know where the disconnect is because you would think the more, for a lack of a better word, the more your mind is being open, the better you see and the better your vision, and then you're able to see where the creative aspect comes in. But you realize a lot, like you said, they're even removing funding in Uganda, and you're like, why? Like you're supposed to be supporting them more, yet you're even reducing the support. So I guess that's tying into my next question, which I think you've answered. Like the biggest obstacle you face as a writer is probably like
Yeah.
lack of support. If I'm just going to like say something about that, it's probably lack of support. So looking around Africa, do you think countries are there countries that you think are doing this better? Or is it just everybody's just on the same level?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of doing things better, I think quite a number of countries, let's just say for literature, are doing a better job of developing like their publishing industry, um, starting up presses. Of course, some of it has to do with just like the economic power of the country. Like South Africa definitely is probably one of the leading publishers in Africa, and that has something more to do with their, yeah, just like access. Um, but yeah, I think there's something to be said for like programming around the arts, and this is where Nigeria actually does a much better job than most people, specifically for literature. I can't speak a lot, and literature and music, I think, are the ones I could confidently say that for. But like, let's say
Yeah,
the time I was in Nigeria in 2015 was for the Ake book, books. I'm gonna say it wrong, the Ake Festival, and
yeah,
that's been happening for a long time. There's a lot of documentation of it. It's a thing that writers know they're going to keep coming together around, and that's super important, right? Then you also see that a lot of, because I sift through a lot of competitions and prizes and stuff for writers, and you see so many where a Nigerian school or person or foundation will say that this is strictly for Nigerian writers. And from the outside, it seems exclusive, but it's actually really important because you're choosing to invest directly in your writers. And we have
yeah,
few, if none, that do that in Uganda. That's just like, this is a scholarship just for
yeah.
Ugandans. This is a residency just for Ugandans. You know, like it's really hard to find that kind of support here. And especially that's coming from within the country. So I think those are the kinds of things that make a big difference is, if it's not even the structure, it's the media, right? Nigerians make a lot of noise about their writers. There's and that makes a big difference. You also have to be the people to carry forth your culture
Hmm.
and talk about it and be proud of it and
Yeah,
represent it. Ugandan artists, I think, have a really hard time here. And that's the thing that we need to do better is, of course, a lot of these industries are super exploitative, especially for performers. But, at the very least, people are getting their names out there. They're getting seen, they're getting heard. And I think with Ugandans, we just don't do a good of a job. Like, there's just something we miss about providing that other support that's not necessarily financial, whether it's publicizing, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the ins and outs of it, but it's definitely a trend that I see quite often. And, we need to, we have some amazing writers right now. And I think the biggest writer in recent years has been Jennifer McClumbie, right? And, we need to make a lot more noise for
Jennifer,
her. We need to make a lot more noise for other writers. There's so many writers in the last like 10 years whose books haven't risen up. And I'm like, maybe we're the ones who just need to make more noise about it. Yeah. So I don't know.
I mean, I guess you're perfectly positioned to do
Mm.
some of those things. You never know, right? So, so is it that those things don't exist at all, or they exist but they are not exclusive? Which one is it?
Like they exist, but they're not getting maybe either the promotion or the support they need, right? You know that I
Oh,
think
okay.
who was I talking to about this? No, this was from the work we were doing in that other report. But that idea of that, creatives need a lot of support up front. The royalties and all that stuff comes much later, right? So there's that thing about the upfront. The book has already been published or the album has already been produced and it needs to be pushed, right? And that they need support there. If it hasn't been yet, then they
Mm-hmm.
just need the support to connect to, publishers or, um, distributors, etc. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. Is I think in Uganda we really dropped the ball on that a lot. Is we just were like, and I don't mean that for all Ugandans. My friends, if you're listening to this, don't take this badly.
You know,
I'm
I
just
understand.
saying it's a trend and we need to
Yeah.
stop it. We could do better.
In just rounding up, how would you describe the state of Africa today? Just
Hmm.
in your own words.
It's chaotic, rich, uh, exuberant. I don't know. For me, like it's just there's this kind of excitement I have as I'm discovering more, meeting more people, learning more history. I think social media has taught me like quite a bit of like random history that I didn't know. So that's the exciting side of it, right? Is as we connect more, we learn more. But it just also seems really chaotic. I read I'll give this newspaper a shout out because it's a Pan-African newspaper, which seems appropriate to our chat. But it's called The Continent. They deliver on WhatsApp, and they give a roundup of
Okay.
stories from across Africa, and you just read it sometimes, and you're like, we are not okay at all. So there's so there's a bit of that, which is really stressful, but yeah, I think culture keeps me really excited about Africa in general and about the Africans I know and that I'm going to know. But politics really brings me down. So that's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Politics is really, really
Yeah.
depressing, to be
Yeah.
honest. Still, we can't find a way forward in
Yeah.
politics. But eventually we
We
will.
have
We
to.
have
We
to.
don't have a
We have
choice.
to,
It
one
can't
way or
stay
the
like
other.
this forever.
So I guess you've answered the question, but my final question would be, what gives you hope about the continent?
Yeah. So I think it is that. It's the culture and it's the way we are sharing our culture. It's like, let me just give an example because I feel like that's always more clear. There are these Ethiopian guys that I follow on Instagram who they're comic book artists, I think. And I'm a zine maker, and they did like a short video about like an old form of what could be considered an Ethiopian zine that's like ancient. It's called, if I pronounce it correctly, like a sensu. And as I'm researching what I'm doing with my contemporary work, I'm like, oh, there are these really great historical connections with what I'm making. And so that's the thing that gives me like the most hope, is that we are finding a way to revive like lost cultural artifacts and ideas into what we're
Yeah.
doing today. musicians are like combining traditional beats with like EDM. You know, it's this thing of like there was a long time of fear that we're gonna lose our culture, our languages, and of course there's still that fear, but
Yeah.
there's a way artists are taking that and they're applying it to what they're doing now, and that's something that gives me a lot of hope. Yeah.
This has been a beautiful
Yeah.
conversation, Gloria. I mean, to be honest, I
Me
really
too.
enjoyed. So, where can people see? Is it see or read now your zines? Where can they
Yeah,
get it?
I finally have a website. This is I think the first engagement I've ever done where I got to say I have a website. So it's isn't it so exciting? It's my name, gloriachoncho.com. So you can go there and you can see, I try to generally put up like a portfolio of work so you can see my writing, my zines, etc. And apart from that, I'm pretty active on Instagram. And yeah, I think those are the best. You can reach me on Instagram if you want to. Just send a DM. I usually respond. So, mhm.
Respond. Gloria, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
this.
Bolu.
I really appreciate you
Yeah,
coming on. That's
this
it was
was a
really
really good
fun.
conversation, and I
Thank you
can't
so
wait to
much.
start listening
So
to the podcast now.